Good morning, my YouTube viewers. Crystal here. I'm just here this morning because I wanted to make another video of the COVID-19 infection rates. We haven't looked at it in a few weeks because I didn't want to focus all of my energies on COVID-19 because basically there are other things to talk about, and I didn't want people to get bored. I didn't want people to think, oh, well, that's all she ever talks about is COVID-19. So, but basically, it's recently been in the news that Portugal has a very high infection and death rate, and because Portugal has a very high infection and death rate, I just thought it would be a good idea to actually look at this rate and see, what's going on with this. And I did actually read an article. Read an article and saying that Christmas time, that the reason why Portugal has such a high infection and death rate is because they had loosened up their restrictions, and it was during Christmas, and that's why their infection and death rate is so high. But what I wanted to do is I just wanted to go over the program that I wrote, and I did actually have to make some amendments to it because when I was amending the program to put Portugal in there, it looks like a lot of people had gone into this CSV file that I used and made a lot of changes. And because they went into the CSV file that I used and made a lot of changes, then this caused a lot of errors in my program. So I had to correct the errors in the program before I could execute it. So the first thing we did was we made our program, and we said we imported pandas and numpy, which are the two main libraries that you're going to use in Python. I wrote the program in Google Colab, and then I saved it onto a GitHub repository, but I couldn't actually get the GitHub repository to come up with the program, so we're looking at the program on Jupyter Notebook. We use this file, we use the CSV file here, ourworldindata.org, and that CSV file is the file that gives you the coronavirus statistics, and it's updated every day. So every day that you use the file, you have to re-upload it into your computer. And one thing I've noticed is the file is just getting bigger and bigger. I think at the moment the file is like 16 meg. And since the file is so large, I have to save it onto my drive in Google. But I do understand there is actually a file on GitHub that's updated every day. I don't know the address of that, but if you can get the address of the file on GitHub that's updated every day, then you don't have to go through reloading the CSV file every day that you want to use it. So what we did was after we imported our libraries, what we did was we loaded up the CSV file. So we called it a train, and it's got 59 columns in it. It's got 66,774 rows, and every day when they update the statistics, obviously the CSV file gets bigger. It gets bigger as every day goes by. So we look at the train info. We find out that there's a few object files, but most of them are float, so that's good. And I suppose if I wanted to, I could do a correlation, and I could find out which columns have a low correlation, and then just remove those columns. So that would be a good idea. So now what we do is we do a date time stamp on the date. So train date equals PD to date time, train date errors equals cars, train date num equals train date, DT strip time. And what that does is that takes the actual date and it converts it to a number. And then because the date has been converted to a number, it's easier for the model to work because that's what the model wants to see. The model wants to see a number. It doesn't want to see a date. So now we check our country. I put in a little code in here to where what it would do is it would put in a list of all of the countries in the CSV file, and if country was in there more than once, then it wouldn't put it in there. So it would put the country in once, but after that it wouldn't put the country in there. So we've got all the countries that are in this CSV file. And we've got 200 countries. So basically what they have done is they have added some countries to this spreadsheet. Now, the last time I worked on this spreadsheet, I believed it had 192 countries. So what they have done is they have added 8 countries to this spreadsheet. And I don't know what countries they've added, but they have. So now what we do is we enter some code so we can get the latest date. So we enter today's date, which was yesterday, February the 5th. Enter yesterday's date, which was day before yesterday, which is February the 4th. And then we timestamp the last date, which is train max, and that was February the 5th. And then that's because some people had actually been going in and putting the day's date in the spreadsheet even when they didn't have the data to put in there, and Brazil is one of the countries doing that. We do a timestamp on yesterday so you can see that, and then we did an if then else. So an if else. If the last day equals yesterday, last day equals yesterday. If the last day is greater than yesterday, the last day equals yesterday. If the last day equals last date, then it's last date. So that's their our if else statement. So now what we do is we call up the file for the last date so we see what's on the last date. And it says it's 199 rows with 60 columns. And so basically what they've done is they've added, definitely added 7 or 8 countries to this list since the last time I was working on this file. So now what we do is we do a graphical representation. So you can see we've got a histogram of the new cases and a histogram of the new deaths. And we've got another chart with the new cases, so you can see that that's gone up a lot. And another chart with the new deaths, so you can see that's gone up a lot. And now what we've done is we've done a box plot of the continent. And so you can see that still you have most of the new cases in North America. And now we do a box plot of the new deaths. And you can see we have most of the new deaths in North America as well. Now we do a heat map. So I suppose if I really wanted to, I could take out all of the rows that have all of the columns that have a low correlation, because a lot of these columns do have a low correlation. So what you would do is, if you were looking at total cases per million, you go through that row, and all of the columns that had a low correlation, you could remove that. But it's a big file, and it's so big it's a bit difficult to see which columns have a low correlation and which don't. It would be easier to look at with the smaller file. So now what we're going to do is we're going to filter out the UK. So we're going to make a data frame just for the UK. And so this is our data frame just for the UK. And we're going to use, and then what we do is, you can see that the UK new cases per million. So you can see here that this was Christmas time. So this was our first lockdown, this was our second lockdown, this is our third lockdown, and this was at Christmas time. And at Christmas time, we went into the third lockdown, and you can see that they say that we have to stay home. They've shut all the businesses, and so you can see that the new cases have gone down. But another thing that they're going to do is they're going to close the borders, which they should have done that from the beginning, because Isle of Man is part of the UK, and they closed the borders, and they don't have coronavirus in the UK, in the Isle of Man anymore. So the UK should have closed the borders, but I think that the UK wanted to keep the economy going as much as possible, so they closed down most of the businesses, but they left the borders open, so they were allowing people into the country. And because they were allowing people into the country, the virus was still coming into the country. And then we recently surpassed 100,000 people who had died from the COVID-19. And now we look at the new deaths with the UK. So you can see again, so this is our first lockdown, and this is our second lockdown, and this is our third lockdown. So they're trying to get the deaths under control. They recently said that they're going to close the borders, and everybody who comes into the country, they're going to have to stay in a hotel to quarantine. And I believe it's going to be at their own expense. And if you watched all of my videos, I believe I said in a previous video that they needed to have a quarantine hotel. I said that was something that Donald Trump could get involved in, since he's no longer the president and he's involved in real estate. But yeah, they're going to need to, from what I understand, is now, after all this time, they're saying that people that come into the country are going to have to stay in a hotel and quarantine, and hopefully it's going to be at their own expense. And hopefully that will reduce the number of cases coming into the UK. So we're not really going to talk about the US, other than to say that this is the file for the US that I created. I filtered it out, and you can see this is the US's new cases per million, and you can see that those cases are going down as well, and you can see that their new deaths per million, that's still really high. So we're not going to talk about Brazil, although Brazil speaks Portugal and they've got a Brazilian variant. Now we're going to talk about Portugal. So I filtered out Portugal from the list. And so you can see here, this is the new cases per million. So you can see it's a really big spike. And they believe it was a lessening of the rules for the Christmas season that led to the increase new cases in Portugal. You can see that they've got the new deaths. and they believe this was caused by um, this was caused by um, loosening restrictions over Christmas, because I read an article before I did this video. I did a search on Google asking the question, why are Portugal's new cases so high? And what they're saying is it's because they loosened the restrictions at Christmas that caused this. That's what they believe. Now we're looking at Spain. Spain is a neighbor of Portugal, and it also has a really high rate of infection and deaths. So I thought that since Spain was a neighbor of Portugal, we'd look at that as well. So you can see Spain's new cases, and you can see all of these spikes here. I'm just wondering if all of these spikes here are the result of them not being very accurate record keepers. And you can see that there are new deaths per million, and you can see all that. So I'm just wondering if they're not very good at keeping records, because you got all of these spikes. We're not going to worry about India. We're not going to worry about China. We're not going to worry about Taiwan. I mean, you can always go look at these if you want. We're not going to worry about Japan. We're not going to worry about New Zealand. But you can always go look at them. You're more than welcome to go look at them. We're not going to worry about Australia. South Africa. South Africa had a peak. Look at that. This is Nigeria. Nigeria had a peak. Seems like everybody had a peak over the Christmas, doesn't it? Sweden's really bad shape now. Denmark had a peak, but it's going down. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to compare the new cases per million, so you can see that you've got a lot more cases than you have deaths. And now what we're going to do is we're going to compare the UK, because I'm living in the UK, and because I'm living in the UK, that's what I'm comparing. So you can see that you can see that they had that spike over Christmas, but the spike is going down. And I do, even though I'm not doing a video on COVID-19 every day, I do look at these statistics, because the statistics are on Google, and you can see how many cases they have in your country. So now what we do is we're comparing the country. So we had to revise everything. What we had to do was we had to set it up to where every country's data set is the same shape. That's the only way you're going to do it. It's the same shape. So that's what I did here, and this code right here was I revised the data set, and to make them all the same shape. And then obviously some people went in there and made a lot of changes, and because people went in there and made a lot of changes, there were a lot of errors, and I had to go through and correct the errors. So now what we've done is we've created these variables for every data set, and the date variable was the variable that we wanted to get right. So the date is revised UK COVID-19 date value. So you've got to make sure that you put values in there. And we've created all of these variables for every country. And then what we've done here is we've created a data frame for every country that we were looking at. So you can see that as I look at more countries, my program gets bigger. Okay, now what we've done is we've merged all these together. So we've merged all of these together. And then we checked for null values. And now this is what we're going to be looking at. These are the main charts that we're going to be looking at. And you can see Spain is red. So Spain actually has more new cases than anybody else. Portugal is green. Portugal doesn't have as many new cases as Spain. US is yellow. US has less new cases. And UK is blue. So the UK has less new cases as well. So you can see Portugal and Spain have the most new cases per million. And now let's look at new deaths. So you've got Spain in red. I don't know why you've got this dip down here. I think that's to do with Spain not doing a very good job of updating its records. That's what I think it is. But Spain is red, so you see we've got a lot of deaths in Spain. Portugal is green, so you can see here on the chart that we have more new deaths in Portugal than we do anybody else. The US is yellow, so we have less deaths in the US, and the UK is blue. So we actually have more new deaths in Portugal than we do the UK, which is worrying indeed, and that's why Portugal's in the news, because they're having problems. Okay, so now what we're going to do after we've analyzed this data is we're going to go back and we're going to carry on updating the spreadsheet, updating the program. But what I've decided I'm going to do is, since this is just an analysis, if you want to, I'm going to do a blog post on this video. And when I do a blog post on the video, I will give the link to the program and you can look at it yourself. And the reason why is because I've gone over the code for this several times before, and I don't want to just keep going over it just for the sake of going over it. If somebody wants me to actually go over the code with them, then just message me and I'll be happy to go over the code. But I'm not going to go over the code unless people specifically want it. And the reason why is because I've done it before. So that concludes this video. If you like my video and like my analysis, please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to be notified whenever I make a new video, then please hit the bell button beside the subscribe button, and you will be given a notification every time I make a new video. If you like the work I do and you want to support me, then I've got my email address to my PayPal account in the description box down below. The reason why is because I don't have enough subscribers, so I cannot monetize. So thank you so much for watching this video. I will be making new blog posts on this video, and I look forward to making new videos for you in the future.